In Microsoft Azure, you can see all your resources in Azure portal and monitor them using Azure Monitor. Now, you can do the same with your Azure Stack HCI resource and monitor multiple Azure Stack HCI clusters together using Azure Monitor Insights solution. We are targeting 3 key benefits with Azure Stack HCI Insights. Managed by Azure, which means it is always up to date. It will be available from Azure Monitor Insights and it does not require database or third-party software setup. Highly scalable. The visualizations will be able to load more than 400 clusters across all Azure subscriptions within a tenant at a time with no boundary limitation on the cluster, domain, and physical location. It will be customizable by the user, which means the user don't have to wait on Microsoft product team to update any of the queries or visualizations. As a user, we will have to do 3 easy steps to get here. Register the clusters, enable Log Analytics extension, and finally enable monitoring. Together, these services will allow us to monitor all our clusters from Azure Monitor Insights. Let me show you. To start this demo, I have an empty resource group in Azure. You can see there are no resources to display. Meanwhile, on premises, I have a 3-node Azure Stack HCI cluster. Let's go ahead and follow the steps to register this cluster to Azure in my resource group and subscription. The registration completed successfully. Now, back in Azure, we can see our Azure Stack HCI resource in our specified resource group. And under the Nodes tab, I see all my cluster nodes Arc enabled by default. And just by registration, all my cluster nodes are fully Arc enabled, providing powerful management capabilities like monitoring, Azure Policy, extensions, and more. Now, to enable Logs extension, we will require a Log Analytic workspace. I created one in our resource group. This is where the log data will be stored when we enable monitoring. Now, let's configure the Logs extension. Here, we will select our Log Analytic workspace and click Add. After a moment, you will find that the logs are configured and the agent that will collect the logs is configured on all the nodes of the cluster. And because our cluster is Arc enabled, the system will automatically handle, add, remove, and replace node workflows to support scale in and out scenarios. To prove that, let's add another node to our on-premise Azure Stack HCI cluster. After a moment, back in Azure, the new node shows up and is Arc enabled. And the extension is automatically added to this node. Now, let's configure monitoring. Once it is configured, the logs will start getting collected in the Log Analytic workspace. After a while, the Monitoring tab will provide information about what is going on with the cluster. It shows health alerts, the health of the drives, virtual machines, and volumes. And it also provides CPU, memory, and storage usage charts. After finishing all 3 steps, Azure knows which Azure Stack HCI clusters are registered and has Log Analytic extension and monitoring enabled. Now from Azure Monitor, you can find the option for Azure Stack HCI Insights to monitor multiple clusters across subscription. This view will always stay up to date with the latest changes and will be managed by Azure. The Get Started tab informs about the prerequisites to use this insight. Provides the number of registered clusters that has logs and monitoring capability enabled, and provides the list of unmonitored cluster. The time range filter allows you to select a range for trend view. By default, it is set to 24 hours. The subscription filter shows the subscriptions that have registered HCI clusters. You can select multiple subscriptions in this filter. The HCI cluster filter shows the registered clusters that have logs and monitoring capability enabled. The Overview tab provides the health and usage information about the clusters and associated nodes. The views can load information about more than 400 clusters at a time. You can always refine these views using filters. At first glance itself, I know that all my clusters are healthy. The grid view provides more detailed information, and on expansion, I can see the node's health information as well. I can further interact to navigate to the cluster resource page and view the per cluster monitoring view. Or I can navigate to Arc for Server resource page. The Virtual Machines tab provides the state information of the VMs running on the HCI cluster and its distribution across the nodes. In the Storage tab, we can see the volume health, usage, and the IOPS, throughput, and average latency trend information. We can also see the drive health status from this tab. Now in the Cluster Performance tab, for the selected time range, we can see the CPU usage trend, average volume latency, volume IOPS, and volume throughput trend. If you are interested in seeing the information about just one cluster, select the cluster name from the legend. These views are customizable by the user. Let's change one of the graphs to a bar graph. It's fairly easy to change the views, and the user can modify the queries as well. Now, these customized views can be saved as a workbook. Let's save it to our resource group. Here is our resource. Let's quickly verify our changes. Anyone who has access to this subscription and resource group can access this customized workbook. That's just a quick look at what we can do using Azure Stack HCI Insights. For more up-to-date information, please visit this URL. Thank you.